Tay Talks Talkies.
Yeah.
Tay Talks Talkies.
I like talking about movies.
Tay Talks Talkies. Tay Talks Talkies. Talks Talkies.
That's right.
Fellow film fans, and in this case, fellow football fans, what up? It's your boy Tay, and this is Tay Talks Talkies. And in honor of the NFL season being back, I'm gonna rank the top 5 greatest football films of all time. Now, I want to start this by saying that I think out of all sports, football has the most quality films. More than baseball, more than hockey, more than soccer, more than all of the other sports. I think football has the most quality films. So, I want to make some honorable mentions. And I want to start these honorable mentions with one of my girlfriends, one of my baes, one of my absolute crushes, Miss Congeniality herself, Sandra Bullock, The Blind Side. She won the Oscar for it. The biggest knock against this film is its inaccuracies. Michael Oher, the subject star, has came out and said it's not the most accurate film, but still an inspiring film and still a film that's worth watching. Next, The Replacements. This is Keanu Reeves early. Gene Hackman. This is a film that's just entertaining, and if we're talking about football films that I think are worth watching, we gotta talk about The Replacements. Then, one of my favorite Adam Sandler films, a film that I think is just absolutely hilarious, Bobby Boucher. We're talking about Vicky Valancourt. We're talking about them Mud Dogs. Why is Gators so ornery? I think it's a count on having to brush all them teeth. I probably butchered that quote, but I'm talking about The Waterboy. And it's just one of them films that if you haven't seen, you need help. I'm so sorry that you were so neglected your whole life. Please, get help. Next, I want to talk about a film that I don't necessarily love. I've seen it once, but I have to say it is a really good film. Tugs on the heartstrings, and I think the subject matter it addresses, it does it really well, really tastefully. And that is We Are Marshall, starring Matthew McConaughey. Really, really heartfelt film, one that's going to have a lot of emotions brought out of you, but I think one that's worth watching. But again, I'm not going to go back to that film. So, Invincible, that's my next honorable mention. Vince Papale's story. Now, the feat that Vince Papale accomplished is epic in regards to him, but it's not epic in the grand scheme of things. He only had one catch in his whole career, and that being said, I think the film is really epic. I think Mark Wahlberg did a good job. And go Birds, gotta, of course, Vince Papale, you're a legend. But because the accomplishment of the film isn't necessarily the most epic one, I just have to put that outside my top 5. Finally, we're talking about honorable mentions. I absolutely have to mention one of these football films that it will just probably never go out of style. It's timeless, and that's The Longest Yard. Burt Reynolds, rest in peace, legend. And the remake, Adam Sandler. I thought the remake is hilarious and worth watching as well, and the legend himself's in it as well. So you're getting a double dose of Burt, double dose of The Longest Yard. And The Longest Yard, to me, is just a badass, hilarious football flick. American, just everything you want out of a football film. So gotta have that in my honorable mentions. And now that we got our honorable mentions out the way, let's talk about our top 5 greatest football films of all time. And I'm going to start with a film that I think is the consensus #1 greatest football film on most critics, most people I talk to. But for a similar reason that I just don't love Invincible, it's why I don't necessarily have this film as my #1 football film of all time. And that's Rudy. Sean Astin, Rudy. We got Vince Vaughn, we got Jon Favreau. It's just a great football film. It's a great inspirational film. The football scenes are somewhat few and far in between, and the climactic finale is amazing, but still we're not getting necessarily the greatest quality football scenes. But Rudy's just an epic tale and something that all people can relate to, and I think it's timeless, and it tells a really inspirational story of never give up, ever, even when the odds are stacked against you. And there's always going to be people looking out for you that you can lean on, just as long as you just open yourself up and trust people. So, really great film. Next, I want to talk about my 4th greatest football film of all time, and that is Any Given Sunday. Al Pacino, Jamie Foxx, LL Cool J, We got Lawrence Taylor. We got Jim Brown. We got true bona fide NFL legends in this film. We got Oliver Stone at the helm directing this film, and it is awesome. It's a great football film, and it's a great film in general. My main knock against the film, and the reason that I don't have it as a top 3 or even top 2 football film, is it's too long. It's knocking on 3 hours long, and it feels a little bit bloated. It feels inflated. But there's a lot of inspiration in it, and I think Jamie Foxx killed it. His scene where he first enters the game and he barfs reminded me of the boy McNabb in the Super Bowl. But yeah, it's just really, really a good glimpse into what the NFL speed, or NFL-esque speed, because the NFL didn't want to work with this film because they addressed really touchy concussion subject matter, which shout out to Lawrence Taylor and Jim Brown for being a part of that, for bringing some light to the concussion problem and the problem with a player wanting to get their quota so that they earn more money despite the risk of permanent life-altering damage. So shout out to them for that, and the film, shout out to Oliver Stone for that. But again, that's why I have it as my 4th. The speech that Al Pacino gives at the end about inches, so epic. I mean, it's so true. The nuance of life. Everything comes down to inches. It's what makes people good or great. It's those inches. It's about no excuses and just leaning on your teammates to get it done. So that's why I have to put Any Given Sunday as my 4th greatest football film of all time. Next, got to talk about Remember the Titans. Yes, Remember the Titans. Denzel Washington, absolute legend. I mean, what more can we say? Denzel is somebody who's just never going to go away. He's one of the greatest actors of all time, and this is one of his greatest roles that he's really not celebrated enough for. I feel as though Remember the Titans, we got Ryan Gosling as one of his earliest roles, and it's just a really inspiring film about coming together, getting past differences, and just finding a way to win, because that's what football is about. It's about coming together, leaning on your teammates, no matter what the differences are, no matter where the difference in background is or where you come from. It's about just coming together and focusing on the goal, which is becoming better people, but also achieving as great of a cohesive unit that you could possibly get. So, gotta mention Remember the Titans if we're talking about the greatest football films of all time. One of my favorite sports scenes, one of my favorite inspirational scenes is Denzel taking them to the Battle of Gettysburg, that battlefield, and having that speech about listen to their souls, and just you got to put the differences aside and work together and lean on your brothers, because that's all life's really about, is leaning on each other and getting through it. So Remember the Titans, got to talk about that film as being the 3rd all-time greatest football film. Next, let's talk about the 2nd greatest football film of all time. And I think this is the film that gives the most realistic depiction of football, what it means to people, actually football speed. The football play is probably the most accurate to real football, and it spawned a television show which was pretty successful itself because it's such a quality film. So I'm talking about Friday Night Lights. I'm talking about Billy Bob Thornton, and a film that really has an atypical ending. And this is a spoiler, so if you've never seen it and you really want to see it, because it is a great film, I suggest skipping about 10-15 seconds ahead. But it teaches you about losing. Unlike most other sports films where the climax is winning, this film, the climax is losing. And everything that they went through, they still came up short. And the way that it was so close, just perfectly embodied sports, football, and it's just, sometimes you fall short. You give it your all, your absolute all, and you still fall short. And I love what Billy Bob, his character, talks about with the difference between winning and losing. They're essentially the same thing, because life goes on. It's the same thing, but it's about what you feel from it. It's about how people treat you and what you allow yourself to feel from winning and losing. And I thought that was a really awesome, amazing lesson. And that's why I have to give Friday Night Lights the nod. And it was a tough call, but I had to put this next film ahead of it. But God, is Friday Night Lights a fantastic film. So Second greatest football film of all time, Friday Night Lights, Billy Bob Thornton. And God, you are a lucky man for getting to be with Angelina Jolie. But anyway, the number one greatest football film of all time, drum roll please, is Jerry Maguire. Yes, Tom Cruise, Cuba Gooding Jr., Jonathan Lipnicki, that's right, Stuart Little. Gotta put that as my number one greatest football film of all time. Now, there's not that much football footage in this film. Actually, it's about a football agent, but the football agent is fighting for his football player the whole time, Cuba Gooding Jr. Cuba Gooding Jr. gives his performance of a lifetime. He wins the Oscar for it. Show me the money! Epic, iconic, and that's what movies are all about. And Jerry Maguire is everything you want out of a really good movie, and Jerry Maguire is that. Tom Cruise at his absolute best, which Tom Cruise always seems to be at his absolute best. I mean, the dude's been in films for 40 years, and he's still amazing. So Top Gun Maverick is one of the greatest films I've ever seen. So can't sing his praise enough. Tom Cruise, you are the man. TC, you are the man. But I gotta put Jerry Maguire at number one. And the climactic football scene at the end, it's epic. It's got true bona fide NFL legends in it. It's got Neon Deion Sanders. It's got Troy Aikman. It's just got all those Cowboys players. It's got Emmitt Smith. It's got Michael Irving. But that final scene where it's the Cardinals versus the Cowboys, it really felt like I'm watching in the 90s, early 2000s, an NFL game, and it really felt like I just felt like really invested in that scene, and I felt like the whole film culminates that one scene, and it was beautiful. And Jerry Maguire, that's why I have to give Jerry Maguire the nod as the number one greatest football film of all time, which is an unpopular opinion. I don't think you hear anyone say that, but guess what? If Tay said it, then it's the truth. Let me know what you guys think. As always, like, subscribe, comment, blah, blah, blah. And let me know what you think, all right? Let's have a good NFL season. Let's go. Tay out. Tay Talks Talkies.
Yeah.
Tay Talks